intro. There we go. And once again, it is my pleasure, and it's not the last speaker, it is a good speaker, a great speaker, because I was supposed to be last speaker, but I'm so excited to have the other Dr. Vicki. We also often tease ourselves and talk about the two doctors in the house, as they say, but this is Dr. Vicki Coleman, and she is a behavioral specialist. World known. She has worked at Purdue. She has a list of accomplishments that is well, it goes all the way down my arm and onto the other arm. Uh, Amazon bestseller book. All what more can I say? So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn this presentation over to Dr. Vicki Coleman.
And thank you so much. And going to share my PowerPoint. And I just want to let all of you know, first of all, thanks to Dr. Victoria Boyd for this opportunity, you and Stan Shields and your staff. Thanks to Al Jensen for helping me get it together. And I just want all of you to know we planned this. We planned this because my topic is, why are you so angry? And we thought we would get me angry a little bit, so then I could really be revved up. No, we did not plan this, but I think this was an excellent example how we can accommodate each other, because it is inevitable, everyone, that something will happen. What is that saying? If something's going to happen, it will. So thank all of you, Dr. Victoria, Stan Shields, Al Jensen, and the audience. And I'm very pleased to be here to talk about why.
Okay, I want you to click the slideshow button and start from the beginning. So it fills up the full screen. Up at the top, at the very top there, slideshow, right in the middle. Go to your.
Oh, I see, right. Okay, yep. There it is. Thank you.
And go to the beginning. Go back to the left. Okay. Up at the top. There. Yes. No, down. No, left, 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 down, left. There. Click that.
Okay, from beginning. Thank you very much. I needed that. I knew that, but with all the stress of trying to get started. Some of you know me as the anger doctor, and that is my brand. And so today I'm going to talk about why are you so angry? I've done a lot of research and professional experience related to the topic. And there are 3 points I want to leave you with. First of all, that anger is a valid emotion. So do not allow anyone to tell you you should not be angry. You should be angry because we have a right to be angry, number one. It's a valid emotion, number two. And we are angry because of some injustice or disrespect or some unfair treatment. So the second point I want to leave you with is that I want you, after this presentation, to consider identifying the triggers of your anger, or what I often refer to as your historical antecedents with respect to your behavior and your environment. The third point I want to leave you with is that you can manage your anger. Anger and conflict can be managed with proper intervention and communication skills. So let me move to the next slide. We'll talk briefly about the theoretical framework. I'm not going to talk too much about that. Many of you know I'm an academician, was a former tenured professor at Purdue University. So I do like to address, on occasion, theory behind what I'm discussing, strategies and techniques related to anger management and bully prevention, and then research that I have conducted along with others. Now, as a professor, what do professors do? Professors lecture, and they also give you examinations. So we're going to begin with an examination. Some of you know the answer, or you may have heard my presentation. However, what was the major international event that occurred in November 1989 that changed the entire world? This was such a phenomenal event. No one ever thought it would happen. It would happen in the 20th century.
Berlin Wall.
The Berlin Wall. Who said that?
Denise.
Okay, the Berlin Wall. Yes, Dr. Victoria, the Berlin Wall. And that, we never thought it would occur in our lifetime or the 20th century or even the 21st century. And because of the fall of the Berlin Wall, there were many changes in what I refer to as the global village. And the global village is referenced as the entire world. And with the wall coming down, governments and political systems changed. So basically, to summarize, it was the end of communism in that Eastern European bloc, and of course, the end of the USSR, the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic, Russia. Now, there are still communist countries, of course, China, Cuba, and a few others, but that major Eastern bloc basically collapsed. That brought about a change of demographics, the economy, technology, and relationships, because of course, at this point, people were allowed to move around, migrate, immigrate, get to know each other, seek other opportunities. We became a global economy, so that now, for example, what happens in Brazil, what happens in Ukraine, what happens in China, it's all interrelated. My very favorite change is technology, and we are using technology today to facilitate movement throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you recall, this is about the same time that the internet became available to the masses. Previously, there was an OperaNet for the military. And one thing we have to remember, whenever things are rolled out technologically, the masses, we get very, very excited. Oh, this is like the Galaxy Note 20 Max phone is coming out in August. Well, that was probably out 4 or 5 years ago in the military. So remember that there are some antecedents or historical background to all of the developments. A major shift and change has been in relationships, and not just personal relationships, business relationships, relationships with other countries, relationships with other cultures. So these are some of the changes. There are a few more changes that I'd like to talk about. Values, mores, core beliefs, and worldview. As people started moving about the world, everyone, every culture, every country subscribes to different values, mores, core beliefs, and worldview. There is no right or wrong to this. However, there is difference. And because there is difference, that oftentimes presents challenges in terms of not only communication, but possibly evolving conflict. Our environment, we talk a lot now about global warming, and some people say it doesn't exist, but something is going on with our environment, the weather patterns, there's something going on. Safety, it used to be more of an us and them, the United States or the democratic countries versus the communist countries. And we talked a lot about terrorism, and terrorism oftentimes focused on other countries, and terrorism, of course, is domestic and global. I did some brief research on terrorism, and it's very interesting because the terrorists are very educated, very technologically oriented, and highly funded. A favorite change is world of work or telework, and we are all experiencing this. Remember when, say, even 10, 15 years ago, if you worked at home, people thought, you work at home? Well, you must be a criminal or a gangster or doing something that is probably illegal or unethical. Now, at least for the pandemic, most people are working at home. So can you identify any other changes that you have observed or discerned in the global village since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989? Yeah, think about that. We'll get back to that later. All right, now, some of my colleagues and I, as we were going through this global village and some of the changes, we wanted to look at culture, and we identified some work done by Shine, who's a sociologist, and other people, and we wanted to come up with our definition of culture. We deliberately did not include ethnicity or race because we wanted people to focus on some other issues related to culture. So if someone has a question or comment about that, it was very deliberate that we did not include ethnic background or race. And so these are some elements of culture that some colleagues and I put together. The first is sense of self, and that's who am I? And this is number one for me particularly because one of my areas of expertise, self-concept development, self-esteem. So basically asking the question, who am I? And there are several selves, not just one self. I, from my background and professional experience, I look at 6 selves: the personal self, physical self, family self, social community self, academic work self, and moral, ethical, spiritual self. So examining all those selves will help one understand and be able to respond to the question, who am I? Communication and language. And we hear the cliche, we need to communicate better. And that is surely an opportunity to promote better engagements. And we do need to communicate better. And it's not just the language we speak, though. Communication, of course, is verbal, nonverbal, all types of different dynamics. And in terms of language, language is very interesting because we can speak the same language and not understand each other. For example, Dr. Boyd and I are from the Midwest, and Al Jensen is from Central America. And when we want a drink, a soft drink, what do we say? Pop. We say pop. Give me a pop. And some people say, what's pop? You want me to hit you or something?
I want to pop.
I want to pop. That's right. And other people in other parts, I think in the West, they out here they say soft drink. In the South, soda. Yes. When I think of soda water. And in some regions or states in the South, they say Coke. Every drink is a Coke, whether it's Coca-Cola or not, every drink is a Coke. So that's just an example of how we can live in different parts of the country and not even understand what we're talking about. Now, dress and appearance. Remember when they had casual Fridays and now everything is casual, and maybe it's because we're partly at home. But I remember coming to Vegas, say 20, 25 years ago, and people, when we were packing to come to Vegas, we would pack, I got to have this to go to the show. And the guys would pack a sports jacket or a suit. Now it's a free-for-all. I've gone to graduations and shows where people had jeans on with holes in them. And I do not understand how people will go to the store and buy jeans that already have holes in them. You know, that's something that amazes me. It's like, I'll just take my jeans and cut them up and not pay $100. Values and mores, those are the things that are important to us. So what is most important to you? What is one value that is important to all of us in this forum? That's one word. It's a value that we all subscribe to.
For me, it's education.
Right. You're right, Dr. Boyd. And for all of us, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. And one thing about values and mores, values are manifested in our behavior. So if a person says, I'm interested in education, and we're not talking specifically about a degree, we're talking about educational programs and activities. So if a person says, well, I'm interested in education, but they never do anything educational, then that's incongruent and that's a lie. Our beliefs and attitudes. We have recently seen a major shift in a major sporting organization where the NFL commissioner Roger Goodell made a major shift in his belief and attitude about kneeling. And if you listen to his press conference, he talked about, and I knew it was a high number. I didn't know it was this high. He indicated that 70% of the NFL players are Black. And so do you see how things shift when the population shifts, when the attitudes shift? Time and space. This primarily refers to our relationship with the universe. And what does that mean? And of course, as one of our previous presenters, Maria Romano indicated, time, we cannot get time back. So what do we do with the time we have? Okay. Food and feeding habits. The interesting thing about food, we all eat the same food. It's just usually prepared differently, or we eat it at different times. But food has been used throughout history to manipulate and shape behavior. So when you think of food, for example, if I said, we have a mandatory meeting tomorrow at 6 a.m., and I know who wouldn't want to come to that meeting, my buddy, the initials of AJ. However, if I said we're going to have a gourmet breakfast, order your omelet, you know, we'll have wine and champagne and blah, 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 then what do people say? I'm going to be at that meeting. So you see how we use food and feeding habits to shape relationships and engage people and get them to do what we want. Family and relationships. It used to be the nuclear family. You know, the husband, the wife, and the 2 1/4 kids. I don't know where that quarter kid was, but the dog. Now you don't even hear that term anymore. And a lot of younger people say, Nuke, what are you talking about? The family is what we define it to be in the 21st century. And there are all types of relationships. I heard a new term recently when I was watching a court TV show, when the judge was saying, were you in a relationship, even though the people were married or engaged or living together or dating? And the man and the woman said, no, it was not a relationship. It was a situationship. Now, what is that? Is that the new term for relationships? So none of us are in relationships. We're in situationships. Play and leisure. Now, weren't we sold a bill of goods when we said this technology is going to make you more efficient, you're going to have more time for play and leisure? Don't we spend a lot of time managing the technology? We have smartphones, we have laptops, we've got email, we've got snail mail, we've got all these devices. And new terminology, by the way. A mouse, years ago, a mouse was a rodent. Now a mouse is something you use to facilitate the technology. Knowledge and learning. Now there are all types of learners: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. How do you learn? Now, and this is critical because a lot of businesses don't understand, and many of you know this, when in most businesses, you do not work alone. You work in a team, on a team. And so each person has a different knowledge and learning foundation. And so what happens when I'm auditory and my team people are visual? You know, how do we work on the project and complete it based on the deadlines, excuse me, and the goals that the organization has given us? Work and work habits. Many of us have been taught to subscribe to the Judeo-Christian work ethic. That is not the only work ethic. There are many work ethics. And so this is very important as we engage and work with people in different cultures, from different cultures and throughout the world. And then spirituality, we deliberately did not use religion, because spirituality, I believe, is more of, you know, why am I here? The meaning of life, the raison d'etre. So those are some foundational background pieces of information. And in terms of how I came to be who I am, these are the 6 guys, or 5 guys, I should say, that and I had a chance to meet 3 of them: Super, Stack Sullivan, and Samanow. All of them are psychologists, and this is my theoretical framework is primarily self-concept development. And that also includes developmental tasks. Developmental tasks are, by the time the baby is 1, he or she should be walking. By the time the baby is 2, blah, blah, blah. By the time the individual is 12, blah, blah, blah. So we all know what developmental tasks are. And Harry Stack Sullivan talked also about the self system, the who am I. Albert Ellis talked about irrational beliefs. And these irrational beliefs are, oh, men should do this, women should do that. If you're 25, you should do this. The shoulds and the musts. And then Stanton Samanow, who is still alive, I had a chance to meet him also. He also talks about errors of thinking. Much of his work has been done with criminals, but it applies to the masses in terms of, why are we thinking this way? Why am I doing this? What is the rationale behind it? So those are just some guides that I subscribe to. Anger, why are you so angry? And everybody's with COVID-19, many, for example, I read recently that the airline industry thought that this would be over by July, and with Vegas opening up, everything would be back to normal. No. So people are very angry from the personal level, all the micro up to the macro. Anger is a valid emotion, as I stated when I began, based on some type of injustice, real or perceived, and also being wronged and treated unfairly. You have a right to be angry. Many people think that anger is, some nouveau riche, late 20th century deal. No, look at this person. Everyone's heard of Aristotle. Anyone can be angry. That is easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy. So we have a right to be angry. We should be angry, because think of it this way. Consider anger facilitates change. Anger helps us to resolve conflict, and it is a valid emotion among the range of other emotions that we have. Now, there are many causes of anger. All of these cause anger. And what I want the audience to consider is that if you're angry, and you have a right to be, of course, why are you angry? It may be one precipitating event. However, I want you to go back to your family system. When you grew up, what type of environment were you in? How did your parents communicate? Did they yell and scream? Or all the way up to the extreme of physical violence, or what we term as domestic violence. And a lot of it has to do with all of these. For example, I worked for several years with the City of Las Vegas Municipal Court in alternative sentencing and education. And I taught domestic violence for male and female perpetrators, anger management, impulse control, the DUI school, and substance abuse. And I had a gentleman who was from Asia. He was actually from Hong Kong. And he said, I don't understand why I'm in this program. In Hong Kong, I can hit my wife. And I said, I understand that. And that's a cultural issue. However, you are now living and working in the United States, and you're going to have to abide by our laws. So do you see how cultural differences? And you can't argue with people about what's right and what's wrong. We have to consider what is appropriate for the context and environment that we're in. Okay, the bully. This is directly related to anger and anger management. Now, one thing I want us to consider, and you may not have heard this previously, everyone has been bullied and everyone has been the bully. The bully has low self-esteem, poor communication skills, impaired relationships, peer pressure, and may have been abused sexually, physically, and sometimes people say the bully has a personality disorder. What is important, though, in terms of anger and bullying, it's really a challenge as domestic violence, because most perpetrators, domestic violence, bullies, most perpetrators have been victims. And so that makes it more difficult to break the cycle. So we've all been a bully, we've all been bullied, and most bullies are also victims and bullies. And I coined the term years ago, the accidental bully. Okay, the bully is someone who suffers from one or more self-esteem deficits and attempts to compensate at the expense of other individuals. This is one of my former PhD students at Purdue University. And by the way, we're rehashing our radio show that we had a few years ago. Now, it's interesting because oftentimes we hear about the bully at the elementary and secondary level. There are more bullies who are adults, and there are more bullies in the workplace. The bully exists in every workplace. So who is the bully in your work environment? Maybe we're the bully in our work environment. So it's important to identify the bully. Technology has facilitated cyberbullying. I have been bullied a few times, cyberbullied on Facebook. And I was very pleased to say that I stepped forward and intervened. I contacted Facebook and law enforcement, and they handled it. So do not, and now cyberbullying is also illegal as other types of bullying. Okay, so when a person comes to me for anger management, and oftentimes it's mandatory, I want to find out why the person is angry, specifically the triggers, what triggered the anger, and what are the historical antecedents or the historical background. So this is an exercise that I developed that was published in 1998 in a book chapter. It's a book chapter called The Lifeline. And I want people to look at the past, the present, and the future, and discern themes, trends, and patterns related to beliefs, attitudes, thinking, and behavior. For example, do you subscribe to any of those thinking errors that are irrational beliefs that previous psychologists have identified? And of course, by identifying these themes, trends, and patterns, the purpose of anger management is to help us identify the source of the anger, understand it, and develop appropriate interventions so that we can manage the anger appropriately. It is not appropriate to manage your anger by hitting someone, by yelling or screaming, or escalating to violence. This is another tool that I use, the Tennessee Self-Concept Scale, and this is how I developed my model of self-concept. These two psychologists, Drs. Fitz and Warren, they measure self-concept and self-esteem. And I previously talked about personal self-concept, physical, family, social, academic, moral, ethical. So when you ask the question, who am I? Look at the 6 selves. You're not just one entity, right?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. This is just another instrument that I use, focuses on interpersonal assertion, empathy, stress management, blah, blah, blah. Truthful, another instrument, truthfulness. All of these things are important when we're assessing anger, anger management, and bullying. These are some conflict resolution strategies that I use. And by the way, I am a divorce and family mediator and a federal mediator for the federal government, certified federal mediator. So in order to resolve conflict, these are some strategies or techniques or interventions that I would consider when working with individuals, families, groups, organizations, institutions. One thing that is really, that I believe is so important in terms of anger, anger management, and communication would be decision-making. For example, 2 questions. How many of you have ever had a course in anger management that was not mandated as an adult? And how many of you have ever had a decision-making course? Very few. That's not taught. I believe anger management and decision-making should be taught at the elementary level, elementary and secondary levels. And here are some other strategies and techniques for resolving anger.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay, can I just say a couple of things? 3 points, alternative therapies, and then the 3 points again that I wanted to leave you with, that anger is a valid emotion. I want you to be able to identify the triggers or the antecedents of your anger. And then finally, understand that anger can be managed and conflict can be managed. And thank you very much. And I apologize for all the technological issues.
No problem. Okay, we only have time for about 1 or 2 questions. If you want a question, just unmute yourself and basically start talking. Any questions out there? I mean, you were so thorough, we don't have any questions really. But I want to thank you. Thank you for being on the Zoomathon for Entrepreneur Foundation's Fill the Bucket July event. And I will shut down the recording now.